to you guys about some updates, just some things that have come in since the last video message. And I had someone reach out to me. I had a couple people actually reach out to me with some neat things about Jupiter. That's something we talked about in the last video message. But one thing I wanted to share, I put a link down below in the video description to a video that was sent to me that was made in the late 90s, and it's really interesting. But there was something towards the end of this documentary that really caught my interest. There was a post, possibly a video, I think I did a video as well, around the time of the eclipse. And I just remember we were talking about that symbol that's on a lot of flags in the Middle East, and it's the crescent moon with a star. We were talking a lot about that. And I haven't thought much about it since then, but this video brought it up and explained what that actually is. And I have never heard this before. And I remember around the time when I'd made that video and wrote that post, I had explored everywhere and I never came across this information until now when someone sent me this video in relation to Jupiter. So it's pretty interesting. In fact, I will say, the documentary may put you to sleep, so it didn't quite catch my interest until it started talking about that towards the end of the video. And what I mean by that, I'll just give you some clues, is something called the Saturn polar configuration. And there's a few components that make up this theory. One is that the planets were in a different order, so they used to be in a different order than they are now. Second is that the Earth was a satellite of a brown dwarf star type of Saturn, but it was in a fixed position. And three, it was a wandering brown dwarf Saturn system with Earth coming into the solar system. So mythology spoke a lot about this. It talked about a golden age with references to the Garden of Eden, suggesting that this was when planet Earth was in Saturn's plasmasphere. And then something happened to the Saturn system, or our solar system, and this was always remembered in folklore as something that they called Doomsday, or when the sky fell on our heads. And this supposedly created the cataclysmic chaos all over the earth that you hear spoken of in these ancient myths. Now, this theory speaks of a planetary alignment that I'm going to mention here in a minute, but this planetary alignment is believed to be what makes up the Eye of Ra. Now, did you know that the Eye of Ra represented the right eye, which symbolized the sun, and the Eye of Horus represented the moon and was depicted as the left eye, and eventually the Eye of Horus and the Eye of Ra were lumped under one name, the All-Seeing Eye. Now in this video documentary, it speaks of Venus being the mother goddess, and this collinear model of the polar configuration describes the planets Saturn, Venus, and Mars in this Earth system. And this belief, or this theory, is shared by several different researchers. It's just really interesting. And this theory describes the way that these planets turned on their axis. It says that Earth, Mars, and Saturn rotated on a common axis extending out or down from Jupiter. And it describes Jupiter as being its relative. In fact, some researchers even have suggested that Venus is the offspring of Jupiter and the Sun. Now, eventually, this all played into ancient mythology, so I guess understanding this theory sort of helped make sense of the way ancient legends and folklore and mythology sort of evolved. So as these planets would rotate and spin, if you were standing on the Earth, this is what you would see. As they would turn and rotate, the lighting would form a crescent shape, and it would change directions, so it would eventually go all the way around. So you'd have a crescent moon or a crescent moon shape in each direction. This was also called a sun wheel. Now this symbol of the crescent moon and star eventually became the symbol of Islam, and today you'll see it displayed on many different flags throughout the Middle East. What's interesting is on their flags, the crescent moon shape is shown in different directions, and so they talked about in this documentary about how that might have appeared at that point on the earth, wherever you were standing at a different location on the earth, at a different time of year, you would have seen that crescent moon shape, that lighting, you would have seen it in a different direction. So it was just really interesting. You'll have to watch the documentary to get more details on that. But it was very fascinating and stirred up a lot of different thoughts and things to ponder about. And now this crescent moon and star that many believe to be Venus predates Islam all the way back to the Ottoman Empire. So the documentary goes on to talk about how in ancient folklore, the descriptions of this Doomsday comet were depicted as these feathery type streams of light. So they would depict him with feathers, flames, and also brooms, different types of brooms. And whenever people saw these drawings or depictions, it reminded them of the angry goddess or the Doomsday comet. And the documentary made references to witches and why witches are depicted as riding on broomsticks or flying on a broomstick across the full moon or across the moon, across the sky, because the broom was a symbol of this Doomsday comet and the witch was a symbol of the angry goddess. Now I'm going to reference this again later on in the video, and it's so interesting how this video was brought to my attention and this topic was brought up in the video because it completely relates to what I had been pondering that same week about this very thing. So again, according to this theory, way back then, everything was different. The planets were in a completely different alignment, and when this Doomsday comet hit, it changed everything, and they called it the end of the world. In fact, the documentary is actually called Remembering the End of the World. Now, there have been a lot of headlines over the last week talking about a huge asteroid that could hit the Earth this year. I've heard talk of lots of different speculations, reports from NASA. I've had people sending me different links and videos and things that I've been asked not to share, dreams and visions and that sort of thing, all connected to a comet or an asteroid. And it's just so interesting because it sounds so similar to this ancient theory and how it just changed everything, put the planets in a completely different alignment. And I just found it interesting that all of this is going on right now in the headlines, and all of these people are sending me these different videos and links. None of them know each other, and it's all connected. It's all so similar. I just had to share. So I thought it was really interesting. I'm going to post the links below, so check it out, and I'd love to hear any thoughts that you have about it. I still get people that reach out to me and ask me, they just say, I'm not tech savvy, I don't understand what you're talking about when you mention these links below the video. I don't see anything. And so I'm just going to remind you, in fact, here's a screenshot that might make it a little bit easier for you. But if you just click right here on see more, it'll open up the whole description of the video. So you're just seeing the top few sentences of this video, but when you click on see more, it'll open up everything. That's where you're going to find all the links that I share on every one of my videos. So I hope that helps. I also had someone reach out to me and share something interesting about my rabbit dream. Remember in the last video message, I shared a dream about a rabbit that was living in my house and it was making a mess all over the place and doing its business everywhere. And I was worried about what my husband would think when he came home and saw it. And it was in relation to a news story that I woke up to that was pretty much about the exact same thing that happened in my dream. And I remember thinking, why should I share this in my video? This doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and it doesn't really have a whole lot to do with what I'm sharing, but I just felt like I needed to share it anyways. And someone actually reached out to me. This is really interesting. She said her husband had a very similar dream right around the same time. So I'm just going to read to you what she wrote me. She said, a couple weeks ago, my husband had a dream that sounded really similar. In the dream, President Nelson was there, and it was such a nice feeling. He was actually walking and talking with him. Then he was at a house. There was another family there, and I think he said he felt that we were supposed to be helping or taking care of the kids in this family. They had a rabbit, and it was pooping everywhere and making a huge mess. He said that nobody but him was noticing the mess and havoc this rabbit was making, and that he was trying to get control of it and clean it and its mess. He was frustrated because his mind was on the prophet and I think another apostle that might have been there. But he was dealing with this rabbit issue that nobody else seemed to be bothered by. So when I heard your dream, I was like, what? He doesn't tell me dreams much. What are your thoughts on the rabbit? So I want to talk about this just for a minute. Now it's funny because in my dream, I was trying to hide this rabbit and its mess from my husband because I was worried he was gonna walk in the door and be really upset. In this dream, we had white carpet. It was actually in our old house. And so when I heard her husband's dream that involved President Nelson and an apostle and how he just wanted to hear them and focus on them, but this mess was quite a distraction, that's when it started to come together. And I thought, okay, rabbits represent fertility. They represent lots of children. And I got thinking that the dream could be telling us it's really easy to get distracted on all the messes in life that our children create, that our families create, all the little messes and the little fires that we have to put out. It's really easy to feel like everything is chaotic, stressful, out of order, and so it's hard to focus on the prophet and focus on what the apostles are telling us and what their messages are right now, because we feel like we have to focus so much on this loud mess and distraction that are within our own families, that are within our own household, in our homes. We feel this frustration. So it got me thinking, I know I did a video last year and I talked about getting our homes in order, getting our houses in order, and that was a message that kept coming, was we need to get our houses in order. I'm now starting to believe that these dreams are a reflection of that message, that when our homes are not in order, when there's chaos and things are out of control, it's really hard to hear the voice of the Lord. It's really hard to be in tune to the Spirit. It's really hard to feel that you're prepared, right? I think there's a fine line with this. I think sometimes we make the mistake of taking it to that level of OCD, right? Where we feel like everything has to be perfect. We have to have a clean house, perfect clean children, everyone's well behaved, right? But that's not what this means. I'm getting this feeling that we just need to shift our focus to the Lord. And if we turn to the Lord and shift our focus to Him, everything else will fall into place. We'll be able to put our homes in order and keep them in order. But when we're not focusing on the Lord, when we're pushing Him to the side because of all these distractions and we're so busy, then we never quite find that order. Everything always feels like it's in chaos, and we just continue that pattern of not feeling the Spirit and not being able to hear what the Lord is trying to tell us. So I feel like this dream was a very important reminder that in this day and hour that we're living in right now, the words that the prophet and the apostles are speaking right now, the word of the Lord, needs to be our primary focus. We mustn't tune that out. We mustn't put it on the back burner and think, well, eventually when things calm down, I'll start paying more attention to what the prophet is saying. I'll start reading my scriptures more. I'll have time to do these things. So rather than being afraid of the mess and the stress of all of that, turn your focus to the Lord, and all of that will fall into order. It will all fall into place exactly how it should be. And those distractions will have a way of working themselves out. But I do believe that when we simplify, it definitely helps. So if there's a lot of things we can cut out to make life feel more easy, simple, stress-free, that definitely helps. So now after she shared this dream with me, she went on to say that it was interesting I spoke about that image I saw that looked like Freddy Krueger. I talked about that in the last video message. And she said that's really strange because she says there have been a handful of instances in the last couple of weeks where his face has come into my mind. I have no idea why. I don't watch scary movies. I've never thought or heard of this character since I was a young teenager. So why? Why has his face come into my mind? I'm not even sure if the visual I'm seeing is him, but whatever it is, he is what it reminds me of and who I think of. And then hearing that you had a dream about him, and she leaves it right there. I think this is just another reminder of how the adversary is trying to use fear right now. Fear is his main tool, it's his main weapon. Because fear is the root of all other negative feelings and emotions. When we're frustrated, it's because we're worried about something. We need something to happen or go a certain way, and we're worried if it doesn't work out, so we get frustrated. Now, worry is another negative feeling. When we worry, it's because we don't trust the Lord. We lose that faith. And so we worry that things aren't going to work out. But really, if we're trusting the Lord and putting our faith in Him, we have complete peace no matter what happens. So you see, fear, anxiety, stress, anger, being annoyed, these are all feelings and emotions that stem from fear. And the fear is usually rooted in ourself. It comes from a place of selfishness. We're afraid of what people might think of us. We're afraid if something doesn't turn out a certain way or isn't perfect enough, or it doesn't fit into our mold of what we're trying to do. It's all about us. How will other people view us and see us? Or will we not get enough time to do the things we want to do? Will this infringe on our plans, on our goals? So fear is a feeling of focusing on me. Because when you trust in the Lord's plans, you trust in His timeline, you trust in His will, and you put your faith in Him, none of these things matter. You're not afraid, you're not worried, you just have complete peace that everything will work out exactly how it should, exactly how it's supposed to. And however that is, that's the best way because that's the Lord's way. And you know you can put your faith in that when you start your day with prayer and end your day with prayer and have that relationship with the Lord. When you put your life in His hands and say, "Thy will be done in all things," you hand it over to Him, then there's no reason to have fear. So I believe that fear is a tactic that the adversary's always been using ever since the fall of Adam and Eve. But right now, especially, he's trying to get into our minds. He's trying to create that fear. Because if he can just put that feeling in us, if he can just plant a negative seed of fear inside of us, it will grow into so many other things that benefit him. And so if you're seeing images in your mind that are frightening, or you have thoughts that come out of nowhere that are a little disturbing, just recognize it for what it is. It's the adversary trying to create that fear in you. Reject it, cast it out, don't tolerate it, don't accept it, don't allow it to take root inside of you. Call on the Savior, use the atonement, and just get it out. And this is actually going to lead into what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm glad we kind of started out the video message with this topic. Now, just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, here's a list of headlines. There's about 25 items on here from just the past couple of months. I have 4 screenshots here. You can pause the video and take the time to read each one. I'm not going to talk about these, but as you can see, if fear is rooted in you, these headlines will only add to that. But if your vessel is filled with faith, then you are filled with peace. So a couple weeks ago, I published a video about my son's acne, and I talked about our journey with that and how blessed we were to come across a solution that has done wonders and completely transformed his face. And it's not a certain product or brand or anything like that. It was just such a simple solution that we had no idea. So if you haven't seen that video, I have a link down to it below. But I just wanted to share that since publishing that video, I've had so many people reaching out to me because you can't comment on my videos on YouTube. YouTube won't allow comments on my channel. So they have to find other ways of reaching out to me. And there were a few people who had lost the video and weren't sure how to contact me. So there were people who were putting it out there on Facebook saying, "Hey, do you know the mom who made the video about her son and his acne? We just wanted to let her know that it works." And so people would read that and go, "Yeah, I know her," and they would tag my name on it, and it's happened a couple of times now. And then I've had people private messaging me and emailing me saying, "Oh my goodness, this works." So I just feel really happy and really blessed. I just wanted to share that with you of how I'm so glad that I took the time to make that video, because it definitely wasn't something I felt like I had time for. I mean, it would have just been so easy to say, "Yep, we found something that worked for my son," and just keep it to ourselves, right? But I just felt like I needed to share. I just needed to put it out there and let people know that this is something that worked for my son. Maybe it will work for you. I'm so glad I did that. I think right now that if we can do our best to get ourselves feeling our best selves, not just on the outside, but on the inside, as we get to a place where we feel more complete, more whole. We feel healed, we feel transformed. It really brings us up to a higher place. We start to focus more on the positive. We finally start seeing the good and the blessings, and we start to feel that gratitude. But a lot of times we think we can't feel those things until we've been healed, until we found a cure. And as long as we're on that journey and that search, we're experiencing those negative thoughts and feelings of frustration, anxiety, right? Stress, which all stem from fear. And so I really believe, and I talk about this all the time, this is something that I practice, it's something I believe, but if we can focus on the positive feelings, even if everything in our life isn't ideal and it's not how we want it to quite be, not everything's smelling like roses in our lives, but if we can still live like we're blessed and we feel grateful and we can bring about those feelings, it pushes us a lot faster into that place where we want to be. So instead of waiting for the rainbow to come in the storm and thinking, okay, I'll be happy once I see that rainbow, we decide to start appreciating the storm, and we realize how grateful we are for the rain. And once we do that, eventually that rainbow is going to come, but it's going to come a lot faster, because as soon as we feel those positive feelings, we rise up. It pushes us up above the darkness, and then there's the rainbow. But a lot of times we get stuck. We get stuck in that dark place. We get stuck in that storm, and suddenly it feels like it's been raining for weeks. And we just don't feel like we're ever going to see that rainbow. We've lost that hope. So it's key to looking for happiness. In fact, President Nelson just talked about this. He just spoke to the people of Orlando, and he basically said to them, yeah, some say that Orlando, or where Disneyland, Disney World is the happiest place on earth. But he said the happiest place on earth can be anywhere. It's wherever you feel the Spirit, wherever you feel that peace, wherever you feel God's love. When you're in that place, which is basically Zion, right? Zion can be wherever you are. But when you're in that place that we call Zion, well, you're in the happiest place on earth. So I just wanted to remind everyone that if we can always try to be in that state of Zion, no matter what's going on around us, no matter what's going on in the world, what's going on in the headlines, if we can find a way to stay in that place of Zion, to stay in that state of Zion, it's going to help us rise up. It's going to push us up out of that darkness, and we're going to be able to be a bright light to the rest of the world. And they're going to wonder, wow, why are they so happy? How are they able to be so positive and hopeful and happy all the time with all this craziness going on? How do they do that? And they're going to want to know. They're going to be drawn to that. They're going to be drawn to your light. They're going to want to know what's making you so happy. And as you begin to share what's making you so happy, that's going to bring additional happiness to you. You're just going to keep drawing that happiness into your life. So that's a place we want to be right now. We definitely don't want to get caught in that trap of fear where we're just focusing on all the negative, all the things that are fearful, all the what ifs, all the unknowns, right? All the things that we wish we could know, and how things might feel uncertain. We might feel insecure, unstable. The future feels unstable. The future doesn't feel so certain. But when we focus on all that, then we just keep feeding that fear, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and things start to feel more out of control, more chaotic, more frightening, and we just keep feeding that. And that's something you don't want. It's so easy to avoid that. So just fill your life with light every day. Just focus on the positive. Focus on what is good, what God is doing in the world, what He is doing in your life, even if it's just the smallest things. And as you build upon that and build upon that, then that's what you're growing in your life. And so that's just something that keeps coming to mind, that we just need to stay in that state of Zion. And that's the best way we can truly endure until the Lord returns. Okay, Sarah reached out to me and shared something interesting with me. In the last video message, I talked about the symbolism of the Avengers movie and the symbolism of, in the end game, how half of the population of the universe was wiped out. And we were talking about that. And I talked about different scriptures that came to mind that reminded me of half of the population being wiped out. But Sarah reached out to me and she reminded me of some scriptures I hadn't even thought of that absolutely align with this. So I just wanted to share with you. She said, I had some thoughts about what you said about around half of the people will not survive what's coming. Here's a scripture and a quote that say half as well. I've been pondering on this the last couple of weeks. It was interesting that you brought this up. President Oaks speaks about the parable of the 10 virgins and then makes these remarks. The arithmetic of this parable is chilling. The 10 virgins obviously represent members of Christ's church, for all were invited to the wedding feast and all knew what was required to be admitted when the bridegroom came, but only half were ready when he came. So you had half that made it into the wedding and half that were left out. Then she said also these scriptures in Matthew 24, starting in verse 39. And knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Then shall 2 be in the field, one shall be taken and the other left. That's half. 2 women shall be grinding at the mill, the one shall be taken and the other left. So again, there's 2 references to half in the scriptures. Half that choose the Lord and half that don't. So just something to think about. Now, something else that I've been pondering on a lot lately, and I really wanted to bring it up in this video message, is this place that I'm in right now. I've had some people reaching out to me and asking me, how are you doing? What's going on in your life? You know, how are you dealing with all the craziness that's going on in the world and all this stuff going on with the weather? How are you dealing with that? How are you handling that? What are your thoughts? And all I can think about is how right now I'm actually in this place where I am so drawn to serving my own little community that I live in. It's like something inside of me just yearns to serve the people in my ward. And I get so excited to go to church on Sunday because I want to look around for people that I can approach and cheer them up or send them a smile or compliment them. I just want to look for people who I feel maybe I can somehow make a small difference in their life for the better. And it's just so awesome. I get so excited. I'm constantly looking around for opportunities to help someone out, to relieve a burden or encourage them or bring them a treat or just something to let them know that I care and I'm aware. And it's just been so fun. It's been so fun to get out of the house more, go to lots of things, be around my neighbors, and just really make those connections. I don't know if any of you are feeling that way too, but I feel like my focuses are starting to shift away from things outside of my community and groups and organizations outside of my community, and the focus is now just within. And it used to not be that way. I think a lot of times, many people, we get caught up on thinking, oh, how I wish I could help starving children on the other side of the world, or how I wish I could take a trip to one of these third world countries and help build these communities over there and help them get clean water and teach them about the gospel. And I just wish I could go do that. My heart just longs to do that, right? But I think it might have been President Uchtdorf that talked about this once in General Conference. He gave a talk about this. But a lot of times we forget that God puts us right where we are for a reason. And we can do all these great things right here in our own little communities, right here in our own little neighborhoods, and even within our own families. And it's funny because for the longest time I felt like I needed to be making my difference on a bigger level, that I needed to be going to other places, other cities, other states, and helping uplift those people and bring them together. And that's what I needed to do. And now I'm actually starting to feel like, no, this is what I need to be doing right here in my own little neighborhood every single day. So every day when I'm out watering flowers or getting the mail or whatever it is, I'm looking for people who are outside. I'm trying to be aware of my surroundings and observant of who's outside and what's going on so that I can be there to offer if somebody needs something, so that I can wave hello to someone and just create more connection in my community. I've actually been more excited to do this than anything else I've ever done in my life. So it's really interesting how the shift has happened so quickly over the past few weeks, and how I really believe that maybe the Lord is trying to prepare us to knit hearts together right where we are. To put our focus in the now, in the moment, in the here, wherever we are on the map right now. And to put all of our efforts there to build up Zion right here in our own homes, in our own neighborhoods, in our own communities, and just focus on that. And if everyone's doing that, it's amazing what the Lord will be able to do with that. It's amazing the miracles that we'll see. But when we feel like we have to go other places and leave where the Lord has put us, I think sometimes we're missing the bigger picture. So anyways, I just feel like my heart is so full lately, just wanting to love everyone around me, just feeling so grateful and so happy and really just enjoying people connections. I don't know, are any of you feeling that way too? Reach out to me if you are, I'd love to hear. All right, in the last video message, I talked about Hank Kuhneman and his message of extremes, how he got a word for the year and the word was extreme. But we've been putting a focus on extreme weather because we've seen a lot of that going on right now. But I think that this word extreme is also having an effect on families and relationships. I think everything extreme, everything that we see going on in our families, in our communities, in the world, everything that seems so extreme and so dramatic is a reminder of how short time really is. Because when you start to see these extreme measures being manifested, it's because big things need to happen in a small amount of time. That's what I'm feeling right now. And so if you see this going on in your family, if you see lots of people in your family or relationships that you're a part of that are just crazy right now, it's very polarized. So you're either seeing extreme blessings and extreme positives in your life, or you're seeing the opposite. You're seeing extreme negatives. Maybe you're seeing people that have depression or anxiety have it worse than they've ever had it before. You're seeing people fly off the handle. You're seeing people lose control of their feelings and emotions and not act quite like themselves. You're seeing people go through extreme measures to make something happen. You're basically seeing the opposite of peace. You might be seeing a lot of contention. I think this is affecting a lot of marriages right now. I really believe there's a lot of marriages that are going through this right now. I think the Lord is trying to get our attention. He's trying to get us to where He needs us. And so if we're not in tune to Him, if we're not already following Him on a daily basis, and we're not hearing what it is He's saying to us, well, then we're going to experience extremes in our life that are going to wake us up. And that's what today's video message is about. It's about a wake-up call. The Lord is trying to get our hearts. He needs our hearts purified. He needs our hearts open so He can come in and heal us and cleanse us so that He can use us. And so when we're closed off to Him and we're closed off to love and we've allowed negative feelings, emotions, thoughts, and memories build up inside of us and build up inside of us over the years, and we haven't dealt with those, we haven't given them to the Lord, we've just been ignoring it, avoiding it, procrastinating it for whatever reason. As we do that, the Lord is going to go to extremes to get that out of us so that we can heal, so that He can have us, so that He can come inside of us, so that the Holy Spirit can reside in us. That's so important right now. So if you're seeing this go on in your own family, if you're seeing this go on in your own life right now, don't be afraid. Remember, fear is a tool of the adversary, but see it as a good thing. And just know that things are shaking up and people are waking up. So trust the Lord. Keep these people in your prayers. Keep your loved ones in your prayers, but trust what it is the Lord is doing. Sometimes people have to go to an extremely low place in order to find the Lord, in order to finally be willing to open up to Him and call out to Him and take His hand. So sometimes we have to allow those things to happen. But again, the word extreme is polarized right now, as is everything in the world right now. So if you have that relationship with the Lord right now, and you're hearing His voice on a daily basis, and you're being obedient to everything He's telling you, everything He's asking you to do, you're being obedient to the voice of the Spirit. You're following through on every prompting that comes your way. You're not putting it aside and saying, well, maybe tomorrow when I have time, but you're obeying every prompting that comes your way. Well, then I believe you're experiencing extreme blessings right now. You're experiencing extreme miracles, extreme healings, extreme transformation in your life. And if you're on the opposite end of that, well, then you're experiencing extremes with that too. And I just want to remind everyone how important it is to take the sacrament every Sunday, because when we renew that covenant with the Lord, He promises that we will always have His Spirit to be with us, to be within us. That's something we need right now more than ever. So if we're not doing that, if we're taking the sacrament lightly, we're not fully participating in it even when we're there, or we're missing out on it, or we're only partaking of it when it's convenient, well, then I believe we're going to be experiencing these extremes right now. Even if we feel like we're good people, right? We're doing our best, we're good people, but we're being lazy with our covenants, and we're being lazy with the Lord and our relationship with Him, and we're being lazy with those promises that we made. Well, we fall out of that protection when we're lazy. We fall out of those blessings. So I believe that's what we're seeing right now, and we're seeing that manifested in all these storms and all this weather. We're seeing that battle of darkness versus light. It is so polarized right now in our society and all throughout the world. That battle of good versus evil is real, and it's happening right now, not just in the spiritual realm, but here in our physical world. And the Lord needs us on His side so He can use us, and we need Him. I've also noticed right now that the Lord is strategically putting His people where He needs them to be. People are relocating like crazy right now, and maybe it's just because it's summer, so I'm noticing it even more. But it's not just the fact that people are relocating, it's their stories that I'm so fascinated by. It's their stories that have my attention. I've come across so many people recently, even people within my own family, who are feeling the need to move. And the circumstances that have opened up that have led them to feel that need to move and relocate came completely out of nowhere, just out of the ordinary, just completely unexpected. And all of a sudden, things are being shifted around in their life, and this doorway opens up, and it's not at all what they had in mind or what they planned or how they thought this year would play out for them, right? They had a different vision, they had different plans, different goals, but the Lord showed them something else, and they decided to obey, to take that leap of faith and trust the Lord. And I keep seeing this. In fact, we had a family in our ward, amazing family, and they went on a road trip earlier this year to Nauvoo, and while they were there, all of a sudden, they decided to buy property. They bought a farmhouse and some land, and it wasn't something they thought would happen on their trip. They had no idea. But in the moment, it just felt like it was something they needed to do. And they felt the Lord guiding them every step of the way on this. So when they came back, they thought, well, maybe this is something we're supposed to rent out. Maybe we just own this property and we rent it out as a bed and breakfast. And then as they got pondering on it more, they heard the Lord tell them, no, I want you here. This is where you're supposed to live. And just like that, it felt right to them. They trusted the Lord. They put their home up for sale, transplanted their family just last week to Nauvoo, and they don't have any family there. This is something totally out of the ordinary for them, but all they know is that they feel such peace about it. They know without a doubt this is where the Lord wants them to be. I mean, I could tell you story after story right now. It's crazy, but I really believe that the Lord is putting us where He needs us to be. And so we need not let fear rule those kinds of decisions. You know, I'm going to relocate my family because I want us to be safe. So I'm going to pick an area that feels safe and we're going to go there. Well, that's not how it's supposed to work, right? The Lord will let us know when He needs us to be somewhere and when the timing is right. And sometimes the places He calls us to don't make any sense at all. And we're thinking, why should I go there? I don't know anyone there. I don't have any family there. Doesn't feel very safe there. Even the values of the people in that area conflicts with our values as a family. But again, we just need to trust the Lord. He's putting us all right now. It's like the pawns on the chess game are being put in place. He has a strategy and He's ready to go through with it, but He needs us all in place so we can do that. Just like the game of chess, you have the black pawns and the white pawns, darkness versus the light, and they're battling it out on the chessboard. The adversary has his plans, but God also has His plans. And when the adversary makes a move, sometimes we see that as completely detrimental to our lives, and it creates a great fear within us, but we forget that the Lord can use whatever strategy the adversary is doing, and He can use that to His advantage. He can use that to our advantage. So we forget that sometimes. Anyways, I just think it's amazing how the Lord is strategically putting people in certain locations right now, and it's happening on a larger scale than I've ever seen it before. It's crazy just to hear these stories of how this is happening. You can feel that the Lord's doing something. He's got a plan right now, and things are speeding up. All right, so now I want to share something with you that ties into all of this. My sister called me a week ago. There was a rainstorm. She called me one morning. She said she was out on a walk. It was early in the morning. And I said, wow, you're up early. It's summer. What are you doing up so early? And she said, oh my goodness. She said, I woke up to the loudest lightning strike I have ever heard. It was so loud that I just said, okay, time to get up. Time to get on with my day. She said it literally got me out of bed and there was no way I could go back to sleep. She said it sounded like it struck within 30 feet of my house, which leads me to believe it hit one of my neighbors' homes. And she said it was crazy. I've never heard anything that loud. You could feel it through the house and it just shook you to the core. It was like a wake-up call. She called it her wake-up call. She said, okay, I'm awake, Lord. So she's decided every morning now to get up at that time and go out on an hour walk, which is also great to have that one-on-one time with the Lord. So today she called me and she said, oh my goodness, I completely forgot to update you on that story. She said, I found out whose house the lightning bolt hit. She said it was just a few houses over and it was my neighbor. She said, if that's not a wake-up call, I don't know what is. And so I said, okay, well, tell me about this neighbor. Do you feel that this was the Lord trying to get their attention, trying to say, hey, wake up? She said, oh, yes. Without going into a lot of detail, she said, I really feel that this family has been making a lot of decisions lately and a lot of choices that are not keeping them on the covenant path. She said, I really feel like this lightning bolt was a sign from God. It was a wake-up call, get your attention, right? Hey, time is running out. You need to make changes now. You need to get back on the covenant path now. And it's funny because all throughout history, throughout culture, lightning bolts always represent being rebuked by the Lord, right? She said it was so interesting that it was that house, but she really felt that it was supposed to be their wake-up call. And she said the lightning actually was so powerful, it shattered their bathroom mirror in their master bathroom. She said it messed up the electrical circuits in their home, so they have to have an electrician come out and rewire everything. She said it actually broke another neighbor's fridge a couple houses down from that neighbor. That's how powerful it was. I believe the Lord is waking us up right now. He needs to get in. He needs to purify our hearts because he needs us and we need him. So if you have these wake-up calls happening in your life right now, don't just see it as a coincidence. And unfortunately, she said that's what everyone in the neighborhood is seeing it as. Even the family that this happened to, they're just thinking, well, what are the odds of that? What a coincidence, right? How odd. And the other neighbors are saying, oh, it's because they have some poles in their backyard. They have these wooden poles and it probably attracted the lightning. None of that makes any sense. But I'll tell you that we've talked about this before, that in the Hebrew language, there is no word for coincidence because they believe there are no coincidences. Everything happens for a reason. God is behind all of it. To believe that things are just random, by chance, fate, coincidences is to take God out of the equation. But we believe that God is always in control, that he is always on the throne, that his hand is involved in every detail of our lives. So to believe that means that we would believe there are no coincidences. So I encourage you, as things start to happen in your life that feel like wake-up calls, as these big crazy things happen in your life and you're feeling extremes, choose to see it as a wake-up call. Choose to see it as the Lord trying to get your attention, to come back to him, to come back to the covenant path. Renew those covenants every week. Do whatever you can to have his Spirit to be with you. Be obedient to the promptings of the Spirit and develop a relationship with him. It's no longer just about if you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's. It's about what's in your heart. You can't fool the Lord. He sees what's going on and he can feel what's in your heart. And if he doesn't have your heart and he doesn't have access to that, he's gonna find a way to try to get in. So right around this time, my friend Nate reached out to me and he shared with me this crazy article and video about a recent Madonna performance. Now it's funny because for the past few years, I cannot listen to music by Madonna. Sometimes, you know, when you're out and about or you're in a restaurant or you're shopping and there's always music playing, you'll hear songs and you're not really paying attention, you're just shopping or eating. But when I hear Madonna songs, I get this strange feeling inside of me and I just feel like, gotta turn that off, gotta get away from that. I don't want to be a part of that. And I don't know what it is, but my son brought it up the other day. He said, Mom, what is it you have against Madonna? How come whenever her music comes on, you turn it off or you leave? And I said, I don't know. It's just something inside of me. I just feel like stay away. There's just something within me that is compelling me to avoid her music. Something about her. It's not just her music, but it's something about her. I'm just really feeling that right now. I've been feeling it for the last few years. So it was interesting when Nate sent this to me, and I have a link down to this below, and I'm not gonna go into detail about it. So if you wanna know more, you're gonna need to click on that article and read it for yourself and watch the video for yourself. The word Madonna actually is a name for the Virgin Mary, and we're gonna talk about this a little bit later on in the video. I guess there is like a television show, a song contest in Europe. It's called Eurovision, and it's where I think songwriters compete. I'm not quite sure what it is, but it's called Eurovision. And apparently she performed at this. So she performed over in Europe, and this performance was very disturbing to so many people. What's crazy is as you're watching it and you're looking at the people in the audience, they're just clapping along and they have no idea what's going on. But the minute I saw it, the minute the video started, I could already feel there's something not good about this. What's interesting is the video starts out, she has on a dark robe. Her dancers have on these dark robes and they're chanting. They sound like monks and they're chanting and it sounds very dark. And then right behind her on the screen, these red lights pop up and it looks like a demon with red horns. It looks like the devil. It looks very satanic. There are symbols and signs and numbers on everything, upside down crosses, all kinds of things that represent the Antichrist, that represent Satan's kingdom. And even though just about every image in that performance is disturbing, what the dancers are wearing and doing is very disturbing. They have on gas masks and they're falling over as though they're dying. It's very dark, but it's what she says that really had my attention. So something she sings over and over in the song, she looks at the audience and she looks at her dancers and she says, not everyone is coming to the future. Not everyone here is going to last. So she's saying that, like, hey, you're not going to be here in the future. You're not going to last what's coming. You're all going to be destroyed. And then these dancers have these gas masks on and they're falling over as though they're dead. And these people out in the audience are just clapping and smiling and just in awe. And it's very, very bizarre. It's very, very strange. And then she shows these images on the screen of America being destroyed. There's these strange things, and it shows the Statue of Liberty, and everything's collapsing, everything's being destroyed, and then all of a sudden you have this desolate, almost Armageddon-looking scene, and everything's burning, buildings are being destroyed, trees are turning black, everything's looking desolate and destroyed. It just looks like all this destruction, and it shows America being destroyed. And while you're seeing these images, again, she's saying not everyone that's here is going to last, not everyone is coming to the future, and these people in the audience are just smiling and, oh, it's Madonna, this is great. They're totally not getting it, and I think she knows that. And at the very end, she looks at everyone and she says, wake up. She tells the whole audience, the TV, everyone listening, wake up. And she says it in a mocking way. You know, she's basically saying, you're all asleep. You have no idea what's going on, but I'm a part of this. I know what's going on. I know the bigger picture. I'm a part of these plans, and none of you are going to be here. And most of you are not going to be here. It just was this feeling of she had joined the dark side. She's a part of whatever's going on. She's somehow in on this. She knows the plans of the adversary, and she's in on it. And she's letting everyone know out in the open. You know, they're not even trying to hide it. This is what we're doing, and you're not going to survive it. And it's crazy because it lines up with everything else that's been coming my way over the last couple of weeks. So at the same time, I had someone reach out to me and share with me some links of a recording of an event that just took place couple weeks ago. They asked that this not be shared, that it not be discussed publicly. So I'm not going to provide links to it. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm just going to say that everything I heard in this recording, it was confirming what Madonna was promoting, what she was talking about, but it was showing the Lord's plans, what the Lord is doing. So again, you have these polarized sides, these polarized perspectives, these polarized plans, but they're both happening right now. And the more extreme each one gets, the more things start to speed up, because the more that has to happen in a small amount of time. So I'm going to leave it at that, but I'm going to say it's been a very interesting last couple of weeks with all of this coming my way, coming in my direction. Nothing I've been asking for, nothing I've been searching out. It's just been coming to me. It's just been falling into my lap. Okay, so just yesterday I was on the treadmill, I was working out, and this video came up of Mike Thompson. I've shared some of his videos before, and it was interesting because it's titled The Next 30 to 90 Days. So I decided to click on it, and all of a sudden I hear him say, I came across numbers 11:23, and it had my attention. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, he's talking about the numbers 11 and 23, which I've talked about both mean the same thing. You have the 11th hour, which is the hour before midnight, and the 23rd hour, which is the last hour of the day before midnight. So 11 and 23 always are synonymous. So he's talking about this, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, is he seeing the numbers 11 and 23 too? But then I find out what he actually said was the scripture numbers 11:23. He said, I came across numbers 11:23, meaning the scripture. So then he shared it, and he had a word to share about that. So I have a link down to that below. But I listened to the scripture, and it was very fitting with this message and with everything that we've been talking about lately. But it's about the strength of the Lord and the blessings of the Lord, and not doubting the Lord, trusting in the Lord and what he's doing. So anyways, I just wanted to share that. I put a link to that down below. Okay, now Karen shared in our 11th hour group, she shared this article right here of a screenshot of an alligator that came into a Florida family's home and caused havoc. And she thought it was really interesting. She said, I've been seeing a lot of alligator stuff lately, and I've heard about this 3 times, and all throughout the story, there's number 3, there's number 11. In fact, I even got a screenshot when I clicked on the article. Here's my Windows tab. It says 9/11. So again, to me, that means urgency, emergency. Pay attention, this is important, this is urgent. She was asking, does anyone have any thoughts about this? And I responded, well, the spirit of Leviathan has been described as an alligator or crocodile. And I know I've talked about that in past videos about the spirit of Leviathan. And so sometimes the spirit of Leviathan in biblical art is depicted as an alligator, sometimes a dragon-looking creature or a serpent-looking creature. But a lot of times an alligator, and I know that there are other people who've written books about this, and I've talked about it before, they describe the spirit of Leviathan as like an alligator. And so I wrote, I'm hearing 911, urgency, emergency. Spirit of Leviathan is sneaking into our homes. The enemy is looking for breaches to get in and attack. Now remember, the spirit of Leviathan is that spirit that gets people to have contention, conflict. Well, what was I just talking about earlier in this video? Extremes happening within our homes, within marriages, within our families, people flying off the handle, people being offended, people feeling hurt, angry, these powerful feelings and emotions that come from that spirit of Leviathan mentioned in the Old Testament. And this spirit of Leviathan affects our communication. And so what someone says to us, we hear it another way, and it twists words. It's a twisting creature. It's a twisting spirit. It grabs onto you. It gets your attention. Something pricks at your pride. You feel it grab onto you and bite you. And just like an alligator, it twists you. It twists you. It throws you. It goes in for the kill. And so you feel this happening in your communication. You feel your words are being twisted. People aren't hearing them the way you intend. Or they're saying things to you, and maybe you're taking it the wrong way, and you're and you're feeling very offended. And so it creates this crazy contention, and we're seeing it in extremes right now. And so when she brought this up, I felt, yeah, this is a sign that the enemy is looking for breaches to get into our homes and attack, just like this story, just like this alligator. So it got me thinking about ways that we let the adversary into our home, ways that we create these breaches in our shield around our home and around our families. And we've talked about this before. I've talked about this many times in past videos. But these last couple of weeks, my focus has been on songs and books. In fact, there were some songs. I happened to be watching just a random video that had John Ramirez in it. I talk about him a lot in the Halloween video. And John Ramirez was speaking to a group of people, and just out of the blue, so random with what he was talking about, he sort of went off a little bit and then came back. But he brought up this song. He said, if you've ever watched the show I Love Lucy, if you've watched all those episodes, you've unknowingly invited darkness into your home. You've unknowingly invited demonic activity into your home. And I thought that was interesting. It had my attention because growing up, we always watched I Love Lucy. It was one of my mom's favorite shows. We watched every episode. And so he talks about this song that Ricky Ricardo, Lucy's husband in the show, would sing. His character had a band, and there was a song that he wrote and sang and performed on the show, and it became very popular, and apparently has had a lot of influence on our culture. The song is called something like Babaloo A, Babaloo I, Babaloo A. It has the word Babaloo in it, and I remember that song. I remember hearing it, and he talks about how that song has references to the practice of Santeria, which is what John Ramirez used to practice before he found the Lord. He used to be a Santeria high priest and practiced witchcraft. That was 100% a part of his life. It's how he lived the majority of his life, and he shared a lot of stories about what he would do, a lot of things he did to get power, and how he relied on that Santeria. He relied on those dark practices to bring him that power, and it was 100% demonic. He knew that. He participated in it. He conversed face to face with demons all the time. They answered to him. He shared that story quite a bit. But anyways, he had my attention, and I decided to Google the words. I looked up the words to that song. I did some research on it, and it confirmed what he was talking about, that Babaloo is the name of a Santeria deity. It's the name of one of their gods, and it's the deity that's over illness and sickness and plagues. One of the lines in the song, I think, even mentions the voodoo goddess of love. And there it is. As I'm reading this and I'm reading about it, I'm like, yeah, there is something kind of dark to this. Now remember, earlier in the video, we talked about Venus, the Roman goddess of love. Also, victory, fertility, and prostitution. The ancients referred to the planet Venus as the mother goddess and would often depict the angry mother goddess as a witch riding on a broomstick. Now the song, written by Desi Arnaz, speaks of the voodoo goddess of love, and here's a screenshot of who she is, and she's also referred to as the Black Madonna. Those that worship her and make sacrifices to her apparently have access to her powers through spells concerning love. Now, according to the Wikipedia, it says that the song is about a Santeria rite that had been invoked by others and suggests that 17 candles be lit up in the shape of a cross, that a cigar be brought to him to pay homage to the deity, the goddess of love, and to request good luck. It got me thinking about other songs that we come across that are just in our culture, that are just a part of history, and we sing them all the time. It even got me thinking about songs we sing on the playground as kids when we're jump roping and doing hand games, and how a lot of times we don't even question where those songs come from. What are their origins? What do they even mean? But we just sing them. We sing them to our kids. We pass them down from generation to generation, and I thought again, could these be more false traditions? And so I got thinking about that. And another song came to mind that I remember hearing on the Disney Channel when I was a kid. It was made popular on the Disney Channel, and kids in the neighborhood would sing it all the time. And it just came to my mind. I haven't thought about this song in a long time, but it came to mind, and I thought maybe I should look that up and learn about that song. It's called Iko Iko. It's interesting because as you research the word Iko Iko, it's spelled I-K-O, I-K-O. But then if you spell it E-K-O, E-K-O, it's a witchcraft chant. It's a spell. But when you spell it Iko, Iko, it has to do with voodoo. It's connected to Mardi Gras and the history of Mardi Gras and the slaves and the Native American tribes that were in that area. It was actually written, I believe, in America. As you start reading about it at first, it seems so innocent. It seems that so it's just a song that's chanting about the history of what went on there. But as I looked into it more and more, I had to dig deeper. I found that it had roots that were tied into voodoo. And here are just some of the lyrics that stood out to me in this song. Of course, it repeats over and over, I'm gonna set your flag on fire. And then here, look at my king all dressed in red. I bet you $5 he'll kill you dead. Just what do these lyrics mean, and why have they been targeted towards children? This is a song that has commonly been sung around campfires with kids, and again, it was a song promoted on the Mickey Mouse Club on the Disney Channel when I was a kid. For the most part, when you research this online, everyone debates the lyrics. No one can agree on how they originated, what they really mean. Now, I did find this. These are the many different meanings for the word Giacomo, which is mentioned many times in the song. And something that stood out to me was down here where in West African Bambara, it means the black cat is here. And it says down here below, the word Jacquemin is the name of a Yoruba spirit, and this interpretation may be supported by other references related to Yoruba, voodoo, and hoodoo. And lastly, I read that some of the major influences for this song is related to a Mardi Gras group called the Shawis, and it said that they used to dress up in far-out Indian costumes and would come as Indian tribes, but the majority of them were made up of musicians, gamblers, hustlers, and pimps in the New Orleans area. So on the surface it seemed normal, it seemed fine, but as I dug deeper, I found this dark history behind the meaning of the words. And I got thinking, oh my goodness, as people sing that over and over and we sing it to our kids, and the song was made famous on the radio in the 60s, we have no idea what we're singing and chanting and bringing into our home. And then when these songs get stuck in our head and we continue to sing them and chant them, we continue to invite that darkness into our lives and into our home and into our families. These are just different ways that we create breaches that allows the adversary in, that we don't even realize, that we just think is so harmless. Now it's interesting, when you look up the word Babaloo, it has different meanings. It has the reference to the Cuban song by Desi Arnaz, but it also has references to a word meaning lover, your baby, your lover, which was a word that was often used in pop songs in the 50s. In the 1950s, there was a lot of songs that would say, Bebopalula, bebop baby, baby lua, babalua. You would hear those words all the time. And I remember when my mom would listen to that music, I would think, what does that even mean? Why do people say it all the time? It's funny that in the Desi Arnaz song, he makes this connection to the voodoo goddess of love. You hear about this goddess of love. And then in American culture in the 1950s, this word referenced your lover. So here you can see the definition of the word Babaloo means father of the world in Santeria, which is based on magic. And in the song, the singer requests from his deity that he receive love from his beloved woman. Or in other words, his Babaloo, which is also defined as someone who is your sugar plum, sweetie, or baby love. This is slang word for your lover. It's interesting how these words have the exact same spelling. One references a black magic deity and the other references your sweetheart. It got me thinking about how many other words out there are slang words in our English language, and we don't understand the origins of what they are and where they came from and what they really mean. Could we unknowingly be creating breaches in our shield and inviting things in? So I see these connections. I see how this darkness crosses over into other parts of our culture and just becomes a part of our everyday life, and it just seems so innocent. We have no idea. So as I was researching the origins of Mardi Gras and the song, I started to read about the history of Mardi Gras, also known as Carnival in many countries. And what caught my fascination was Germany. So it says right here, it says the celebration of the same day in Germany knows many different terms, but it goes on to talk about dirty, lard, fat, greasy Thursday, where people begin to feast and fatten up in preparation for Lent and fasting, eve of the fast. So it's a season. This tradition for carnival season starts on November 11th at 11:11 a.m. You have 4 11s right there. I took a screenshot. That is fascinating. I would like to know the reasoning behind that. All right, so right around the time I was pondering all of this, someone reached out to me and she shows me this picture right here. I used to have this book growing up as a child, so right away I recognized this. And she said, okay, please just give me your opinion on this. Is this a witch or am I going crazy? I didn't know who else to ask that would understand where I'm coming from. I have never liked this book. My in-laws gave it to us, so for that reason I have not sent it to the Goodwill. I have never read it to my kids, and every time I'm clearing things out, I think, I want to get rid of this. So it's laying on the floor today, and even though I've had this book for 8 years, I've never seen it in this light. I looked at it and all I saw was a witch, really clearly. My husband thinks I'm crazy and that I'm mixing it up with the time period dress. I would love your opinion, thanks. Okay, you know, it's funny because like I said, I used to have this book growing up and right away when I looked at it, I could see where she was coming from. I could see what she was talking about. So I decided to do a little bit of digging. Now I had just been pondering chants and rhymes because it was connected to those songs that I was talking about that I felt I needed to dig a little deeper on. And then a friend reaches out to me and shares this with me. So I start thinking, okay, this is something that is geared towards children. It's geared towards children, and these are catchy rhymes that get stuck in your head that you sing over and over and over, and tradition has it that we have fond memories of these rhymes, and so we pass them on to our children and they pass them on to their children. What are these rhymes really about, and who wrote them? Who is Mother Goose, and why is she often portrayed as a witch? And so I just started thinking about this. It reminded me of the Halloween video, how we talked about everything being geared towards the children and how that's the tactic of the adversary. He goes after the children. And when you have these traditions ingrained in you as a young child, it's a lot more difficult to grow out of them later on. And you want to pass them down to your children, and you create these memories and traditions. So again, I decided to dig a little deeper, and here's what I found. So before we get into the history of Mother Goose and who she is, let's talk about the background of some of these popular nursery rhyme classics, starting with Peter Pumpkin Eater. Now the first thing that should raise a red flag is where I got this information. It's from a website called New World Witchery, which is all about promoting and supporting American traditional witchcraft. Now the article that I'm referencing actually says, today we look at a toy chest full of children's nursery rhymes, playground games, and riddles. We talk about how these sing-song verses can sometimes hide bits and pieces of valuable witch lore, as well as how they can be incorporated into one's practice. Now here's what they say about Peter Pumpkin Eater, who had a wife and couldn't keep her. He put her in a pumpkin shell, and there he kept her very well. This is a popular classic that many of us as children learned to play on the piano. So they write in this article, this rhyme fits in very well at New World Witchery because it originates in North America. While many nursery rhymes came from the UK, the mention of the pumpkin in this one tells of its roots. Pumpkins are a New World fruit, unknown in Europe prior to the colonial era. But what's it all about? Well, if a man has a wife he can't keep, it means that she is being generally unfaithful to him and turning him into a cuckold. My take on this particular rhyme is that our good fellow Peter knows of his wife's infidelity and decides to put a stop to it. He does this by putting something of hers, likely something very intimate like used underclothes, into a pumpkin shell, which, as it rots, prevents her from being able to dally with other men. This sort of spell is common enough in hoodoo and is generally referred to as binding someone's nature, so they cannot sexually perform with another partner. Now, other sources that I referenced spoke of Peter being a murderer. He kills his wife, chops her up, and puts her body in a pumpkin shell, and there he keeps her very well so that she is never unfaithful again. So it may also have a morbid meaning. This all just begs the question, why is this being read to children? Alright, now let's talk about the nursery rhyme of the crooked man who walks a crooked mile, or the crooked path, which I can tell you definitely is not the covenant path, probably the complete opposite. Notice in this picture, his black cat is on a tombstone. Now, the author of this same article says, the repetition of the word crooked seems to be almost a mantra or a chant for moving into another state of mind. I think that the crooked mile could well be the crooked path of witchcraft. The crooked style is likely the gateway between worlds. So my best use of this charm is to act as a road opener between the mundane world and the world of spirits. There are also plenty of stories about paying a tithe to hell before crossing over, and it's usually something nominal, or at least something that seems nominal at the time. So a sixpence would fit the bill. Now, what about the childhood rhyme, "The London Bridge is Falling Down"? Well, I Wikipedia'd it, and there are many different theories. One thing that stood out was the child sacrifice theory. Yep, you heard that right. This theory is that the song refers to the burying, perhaps alive, of children in the foundations of the bridge. This was based on the idea that a bridge would collapse unless the body of a human sacrifice was buried in its foundations, and that the watchman is actually a human sacrifice who will then watch over the bridge. And if that isn't morbid enough, let's talk about the popular children's song "Ring Around the Rosies," which is also a nursery rhyme. Now it says here, the invariable sneezing and falling down in modern English versions have given would-be origin finders the opportunity to say that the rhyme dates back to the Great Plague, or the Black Plague. A rosy rash, they allege, was a symptom of the plague, and posies of herbs were carried as protection and to ward off the smell of the disease. Sneezing or coughing was a final fatal symptom, and all fall down was exactly what happened. The ashes, ashes in colonial versions of the rhyme is claimed to refer to the cremation of the bodies. Now, I had heard this before, and it crosses my mind every time I hear children singing it. Do they really know what it is they're singing? And if they did, would they continue to sing it? Now, let's dig into Mother Goose. Artwork of Mother Goose, dating back to the 18th century, depicts her with a broomstick, a pointed hat, buckled shoes, and a dark cloak, flying on a goose across the sky. Sometimes she is depicted as a gentle-looking elderly woman, but most often she is featured as a haggardly-looking witch with a long pointy nose, sometimes with gray or green-colored skin and long, bony fingers, always hovering over the children or gathering around them, telling them stories and chanting rhymes. I was reminded of what I mentioned at the earlier part of the video about ancient folklore depicting an angry mother goddess flying across the sky. Her broomstick represented the Doomsday comet that caused destruction on the earth, much like what we read about in folklore with witches wearing pointy hats, flying on broomsticks, targeting children, and lashing out their anger through casting spells. Here's an illustration from a nursery rhyme from a vintage Mother Goose book, Black Cats and Witches. Here she is on a couple of different covers of turn-of-the-century Mother Goose books, depicted as an angry witch with a sinister smile. Who would want to read these stories to their children? This would give them nightmares. And something odd about the cover on the right, notice her foot is pointed backwards. Sometimes Mother Goose is even depicted as dusting the cobwebs out of the sky with her broom. Similar to the nursery rhyme of the old woman tossed up in the basket, 19 times as high as the moon. Where she was going I couldn't but ask it, for in her hand she carried a broom. And then there was the old woman and her cat, who rode on a broom, another nursery rhyme that is often forgotten. So what is this fascination with Mother Goose nursery rhymes depicting so many old women? Often these rhymes start out with, "There was an old woman," such as there was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children she didn't know what to do, so she whipped them and sent them to bed. And in this original 1797 version, it speaks of the old woman going out to purchase coffins for her children. When she comes back, she finds them laughing, sending the message that if you have unruly children and you can't afford to take care of them, well, you just go out and buy them coffins. And then there's poor old Mother Hubbard, who goes to her cupboard and the cupboards are bare. In this vintage drawing, Mother Hubbard looks like a witch. She has extremely large masculine hands and hair on her chin. So, just who is Mother Goose? Well, it depends on who you ask. If you Google it, you're going to find lots of different theories, and there doesn't seem to be any clear, concrete evidence. However, there was a story in 1875 called Mother Goose and Her Son Jack. The story is very similar to Jack and the Beanstalk and the goose that laid the golden egg. Jack and his mother are poor. He goes into town and buys a goose, falls in love with a beautiful lady. The goose happens to lay golden eggs. He becomes wealthy, and they all live happily ever after, and Mother Goose flies away on her gander. But that still doesn't explain why Mother Goose was more often depicted as a sinister, evil witch. But some speculate that it has to do with a connection to an old Germanic goddess named Holda. Now, because my husband is German, I'm very familiar with Holda and her nursery rhymes. Holda was deeply connected to children. She instructed them, brought gifts to them at winter solstice, took unbaptized babies back into her womb, and even kept unborn infants in her underground water reservoirs, ready for delivery to their human mothers when the time was right. And there are many similarities between Mother Goose and Holda, one of them being that they both were drawn with large bird beak noses. Some believe that this has to do with ancient roots of Holda being a bird goddess. She was eventually also shown as shaking feathers out of a pillow. That's part of her story. And the feathers represented snow. It had to do with winter solstice. She would fly through the air on birds, or fly in a wagon or a sled pulled by birds. After the fall of Rome, Holda merged with the goddess Aphrodite. And still to this day, Germany pays homage to Frau Holle, or Holda, in many of their traditions. So, Mother Goose and Holda were both associated with flying on birds and loving children. But there came a time when the church felt that Holda was no longer a good influence on young women. She was no longer instructing them, but rather corrupting them. So, throughout the centuries, the church began to demonize her. This could explain why she was portrayed as an evil witch. The church was trying to help steer the youth away from these pagan deities. So, instead of showing her flying on a bird, she now flew on a broom, and her bird beak nose became large and hideous. And after the church demonized her, it became deadly for Europeans to associate themselves in any way with Holda. Most stopped teaching their children about her, and it's believed that some still secretly followed her under a new name to protect themselves, and that new name was Mother Goose. So, could Mother Goose actually be a pagan deity? With it so rooted in our blood and in our culture and in our traditions, it's no wonder that we have such a fascination and fixation with witches. And according to this article that I have linked down below, Mother Goose sort of came out of the closet at the same time the European witch craze began to taper off. By 1630, the worst of the witch trials were over, and only 4 years before that, in 1626, the term Mother Goose made its first appearance in print. In fact, in 1806, Mother Goose appeared as a bona fide witch in the British play Harlequin and Mother Goose, in which Mother Goose not only raises a storm, but also raises a woman from the dead. And by the 1880s, American artists felt safe showing Mother Goose as a magic woman, akin to the goddess Holda and Aphrodite. To most, she was a child-loving goddess, but to others, she was a sinister monster. This would explain the images as the Halloween witch. Well, since 1930, Mother Goose has rarely been depicted as an evil-looking woman. Sometimes she's even shown as a beautiful, majestic, and glorious woman, a protector of children. Alright, so I'm getting to my point with this here in a minute, but I want to say when I was pondering on Mother Goose, the first thing that came to mind was Mother Gothel. Now, Mother Gothel is featured in the fairy tale Rapunzel by the Brothers Grimm, and in their version of the fairy tale, she's depicted as a typical witch-like character, but Disney later changed this as they adapted it to their film. Nevertheless, she is an evil woman who seeks immortality and powers through Rapunzel's hair. And in German, the word Gothel means godmother, which reminds me of mother goddess or mother god. Now the word Gothel reminds me of the word Gothic or goth, which according to these definitions is a person who is a part of a subculture that favors a darker style of music and a morbid aesthetic, someone who dresses in black shirts and black pants, and also defined as a barbarian. Clearly, this word is associated with darkness. Now, as I pondered on the word Mother Gothel and Mother Goose, well, Mother Goddess came to my mind, and this brought me back to the beginning of this video message when I was watching that documentary about the Saturn Theory and about this angry Mother Goddess who came across the sky on the Doomsday comet, which created much destruction on the Earth. I began to think about paganism and Wiccans and how they worship these mother goddess deities. Then what came to mind is Mother Gaia, also known as Mother Earth. Now, according to Greek mythology, Gaia is the primal Mother Earth goddess. She is the mother of all life. Kind of sounds like Eve, doesn't it? Now, she is supposedly the immediate parent of Uranus, the sky, and she bore the Titans, or the Olympian gods, the giants of the earth. She has definite similarities to the German deity Holda, as she is related to life. Now, as these deities have become such a part of paganism and the practice of Wicca and the New Age, it's crazy to see how much they have become immersed into our everyday culture and tradition. Now, going back to the Saturn Theory and that ancient lineup of those planets, there was this formation called the Triform Goddess sign. Well, the triple goddess is in reference to Maiden, Mother, and Crone, which is represented by the waxing, full, and waning moons. And again, Mother Goose and witches are always depicted as flying across the moon. Now, as I was looking at this triform goddess sign, I couldn't help but be reminded of the Mercedes-Benz emblem. So I decided to look up the meaning of the word Mercedes, and apparently it means mercies, and it comes from the Spanish title of the Virgin Mary, so Mary of Mercies. So again, there we have the Virgin Mary, who many refer to as the Mother Goddess and Madonna. Well, I just had to look up the meaning of the Mercedes-Benz star. So as I looked into this, I learned that it represented the automaker's drive towards universal motorization with its engines dominating the land, sea, and air. Hence you have the 3 points. So according to these news stories, it says, yes, the Mercedes-Benz emblem is a symbol for the company's plan for world domination. And as I thought about this, I thought of, again, the word Mercedes having to do with the Virgin Mary or Madonna. Then I thought of Madonna's performance at Eurovision and how her performance portrayed world domination. Well, you guys, when I thought of Mercedes-Benz and world domination and realizing that they're a German company and that this emblem was created around 1906, I thought of Hitler driving around in these Mercedes-Benz cars and how he very much was after world domination. And Nazism was filled with paganistic practices, rituals, and beliefs. It was a cult that created its own mystical religion on the premise of seeking world domination. Now, Hitler was raised as a Catholic, and I couldn't help but notice so many connections with the Virgin Mary and voodoo and Santeria and so many other dark practices and arts. This mother goddess seems to be a common denominator. So as I researched this and looked into this, check this out, I took a screenshot. This caught my attention. It said that voodoo is a fusion between ancient African tribal practices and Catholic doctrine. Well then, when I was looking up the Cuban song, this is what I found. This popped up. This was an article from the Deseret News. This is a quote from the Director of Hispanic Affairs from the Catholic Diocese of Salt Lake. The problem is Santeria deceives people. The church takes a negative position toward Santeria. Santeria uses the saints and other aspects of the church to make people more ignorant. It's related to witchcraft. The message of Christ was good news, but the message of Santeria, we feel, is a message of fear. So there again comes up that word fear. And it's funny that both of these, the voodoo and the Santeria, both blend in Catholic doctrine and Catholic practices. So it's this merge of the dark arts and Catholicism. So you have these people in these communities who see it as a good thing. It's a good thing. It involves the saints and things that they're familiar with, but yet it has this dark side to it that's more along the lines of witchcraft. And if this is happening with Catholicism, then you know it's also infiltrating other Christian churches. Satan is the great deceiver, and he's going to take things that are familiar to us and sneak in things that are not true, that are falsehoods. But they sound so wonderful and interesting and fascinating, and we get curious. And as we explore them, we begin to take them on as truths. In the scriptures, the Lord warns us to be careful that we not be deceived in the last days. And with all this infiltration into the Christian churches, it's very easy to fall into that deception, especially when so much of it is highly popularized in the media and in pop culture. Now, a great example of this is Doreen Virtue. Now, just in case you haven't heard of her, she has made a huge impact on the New Age movement over the last several years. She's racked up millions of followers, millions of dollars because of her angel oracle cards and her books on angel therapy. However, she had a change of heart back in 2017 when she had some sacred and personal encounters with Jesus Christ. Because of this, she converted to Christianity and was baptized, and she has since renounced her previous work. She has since stated that she was deceived and that we shouldn't pray to angels or worship these deities while seeking after mysteries. She said we should simply develop a relationship with our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and He is the only way to happiness, the only source of truth. Alright, I just want to shift gears now and talk about a few more things that were in my notes for this week. And the first thing is the movie Aladdin. I got to see this movie right when it came out, and it was shortly after the last video message. But I just wanted to talk about a part in the movie where there was a new song that was added called Speechless. Now, it was very powerful and in a way prophetic. Now, the lyrics say, "Here comes a wave meant to wash me away, a tide that has taken me under, broken again, left with nothing to say. My voice drowned out in the thunder, but I can't cry and I can't start to crumble whenever they try to shut me or cut me down. I can't stay silent, though they want to keep me quiet, and I tremble when they try it. All I know is I won't go speechless." And I believe this year, in 2019 and going forward, women are rising up. They're sharing what's in their heart. They're sharing their testimony. They're not holding back. They're not being timid. They're not feeling inferior. They're rising up for the Lord and being powerful in His kingdom. And as I watched Princess Jasmine sing this with such passion, I could feel it from head to toe. I could feel the witness of that message. And I've seen others expressing the same thing on Facebook, how they were really impacted by this song and they felt a witness. Now, Princess Jasmine is a woman of the Middle East. Now, speaking of women in the Middle East and the Far East, I want to talk about a message that was just given by Sadhu Sundar Selvaraj, who is a Christian prophetic minister specifically to the people of India. I'll have a link to this down below if you'd like to listen to the video, but during this prophetic sermon that he gave, he spoke specifically to the women in a certain part, and he spoke to them and he said, "No more are you going to be idle in your homes. Yes, you're still going to be mothers and housewives, but you're not going to be idle for the Lord." He said it's time for you to flap your wings and rise up. The Lord needs you to be powerful in His kingdom right now in this year, 2019. He also spoke to the people about martyrdom and said, Christian persecution is coming. It has started. Get ready for it. And he's been speaking this message since last year, prior to the Sri Lanka Easter massacre that took place earlier this year. He's been speaking it to Christians in the Philippines and in other islands. Well, this reminds me of what President Nelson just said to the people of Samoa. He warned them about the upcoming persecutions that they will be facing, and he asked them to protect their children. Now, I love what President Nelson recently said about how they are trying to simplify the ordinances of the gospel and simplify it in a way that it can be available to even more people. And he says that there's this imbalance right now. He said, this imbalance is on our worry list, high on the list. One Muslim man said it this way, "When your Christianity is simple enough that I can take it on the back of a camel, I will be interested. Faith, repentance, baptism, the endowment, and the sealing ordinances are essential. Everything you'll see happening in the church from this point forward will be in that direction." I believe that these changes and this simplification will open up doorways in the Middle East, and we're going to see some crazy amount of conversion taking place on that side of the world. So this is exciting. I also think it'll make it easier for people who live in places such as China to be able to have church at home and be able to partake of these ordinances. It will make it way more accessible to them. All right, now lastly, I had this thought on my mind the other day to look up Mena Lee Grebin. And I haven't looked at any of her videos or anything that she's done in the longest time. She just came across my mind yesterday, and so I pulled her up on Facebook, and it was so crazy. I saw this right here and took a screenshot. There's the number 311, third day power in the 11th hour, and 144, the 144,000. So two major numbers on there. The title of this video is Prophecy Update The dragon has been released. So I have a link to that down below if you want to check it out. So the other day I was in the car with my son, and all of a sudden this song came on the radio, and it was either the song or the name of the band, but we saw the word groceries. It just said groceries, and we kind of laughed about it. And then we were flipping through the channels and another song comes on, and I can't remember if it was the name of the song or the band, but we saw the word supermarkets. So he brought it up, and I was thinking the same thing. Mom, isn't it funny that within just a couple minutes, there's a song and a band with groceries and supermarkets? That's kind of weird. And of course, you know me, when I hear that, weird means pay attention. It's pointing to something. Well then, again, every time I shop online through my Walmart app, I always get the number 311. I've got screenshots of that. So I'm thinking, what is it the Lord is trying to tell me about groceries and supermarkets? Is he preparing me for something? Is this something he wants me to be aware of? I will tell you this, I had a strong impression over this last week to establish more long-term food storage. I got to a certain point a few years ago where everything was great and amazing, and I've had that feeling, nope, you can do more, you can do more. So I've been working on that again right now. But I just get this feeling that we need to pay attention and be aware of changes that could be coming that will affect our supermarkets and our groceries. So I just want to put that out there. I don't know if any of you have been feeling that as well, but with groceries and supermarkets and getting the number 311 all within a day, I felt that was significant. All right, last I just want to share with you something awesome that I've been doing. I've had this strong feeling over the past couple months that I need to read the Bible cover to cover. I know we're studying the New Testament right now at church, and I have read the New Testament before. I've read the Book of Mormon many times and the Doctrine and Covenants many times, but not so much the Old Testament. The Old Testament is something I sort of get lost in, and a lot of times that's because of the long lineages and genealogies that are listed and just some of the stories I would get bored with, and for some reason I've always struggled with the Old Testament. Well, I just had this feeling that it was time for me to sit down and read it cover to cover, not breaking it up in books, but just doing it cover to cover. I have a Bible app on my phone. I've had it since last summer, and it has many different translations of the Bible, which is fun because you can be reading it and compare it to other translations, and you just get so much more out of it. So I felt that I was to read the Bible this time in the New Living Translation. And let me just tell you, it has been amazing. I was reminded of a post I wrote last year about the church's policy on the different translations. And in the King James Version of the Bible, that was something translated into English. And so it's something that's standard for all English-speaking members of the church. But as far as all the other languages of the church has opened it up and says you can read whatever translation you like prayerfully. Just go into it with your gift of discernment, but read whatever translation you like. So the New Living Translation was published in 1996. And it was originally started as an effort to revise the Living Bible, but it ended up evolving into an English translation from Hebrew and Greek texts. So you get this translation that's derived from Hebrew and Greek texts, but it's written in modern day English. So it doesn't have the thys and the thous, the language that we don't use today. And I think sometimes that language is kind of hypnotizing. It kind of puts me to sleep. But as I've been reading it in modern day English, and let me just give you an idea. It describes it as being middle school reading level. So kids can read this, your teens can read this, and they're not going to be bored. And let me just tell you, I'm reading Genesis in a way I've never read it before. I can't put it down. I'm just reading chapter after chapter after chapter. It's like a novel. It's so awesome, and I've learned so much. I've read Genesis many times, the King James Version, but I'm getting so much more out of it than I ever have before, and I've learned quite a bit. And I'll put it down and I'll stop and I'll tell my kids and my husband, did you know this? Did you know this? So I've been learning quite a bit. It's been amazing. And I just wanted to put that out there. I've got a link down below to this app. If you want to download this app on your phone, it has the New Living Translation version, also many other versions. So it's kind of fun to compare. So anyways, I've really enjoyed that. That's really been enriching my scripture study right now. Just wanted to share that with you. So to sum up this week's message, I just think we need to be aware of fear. And if we're letting fear rule our lives, rule our choices, rule our decisions, because if we are letting fear rule us, if we're letting the adversary have power over us, then we can expect to experience a wake-up call in this final hour. This video is a reminder to secure your shield, to secure your protection around you, your family, your home, and your property, to do whatever you can to keep the adversary out, to let go of false traditions that are holding you back and giving the adversary legal authority over your life. Anything that's creating a breach in your shield, recognize it and do something about it. So I just felt that I needed to bring this to your attention so that we could all be aware of it. But definitely it's something you should take to the Lord, pray about it, ponder on it, see what He says to you about it. Maybe create your own nursery rhymes that are Christ-centered or that teach truths. Those would be great things to get stuck in our children's heads, right? But often the enemy breaches our shield dressed as a wolf in sheep's clothing, so appearing innocent, especially to the children. But underneath that costume is a wolf, someone who's going in for the kill. So just something to be aware of in this final hour. Satan is pulling out all the stops. He's not holding back on anything. It's so important that you have a close relationship with the Lord and with the Spirit so you can get that personal revelation for you and your family, so you can recognize what's bringing darkness into your home so you can do something about it. Anyways, thank you so much for joining me today, you guys. I'd love to hear from you. If you want to share more with me about this video message, reach out to me through my Happy Lady Facebook page, message me on Facebook, contact me through email. Either way, I'd love to hear from you. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time.